The Lowdown is fake news.
Hello, I'm Rhys Stephenson and we are coming at you live from the National Film and Television School, so don't you go anywhere. Don't you turn that dial, don't you boil that kettle, don't you even feed that goldfish. Actually, no, go feed the goldfish, she needs it. But then when you're done, come back here, because this is the Lowdown. And as you can see, I'm in the gallery, the mothership where all the magic happens, and where these people work tirelessly for your viewing pleasure. This includes comedy from Ed Knight. We'll also be asking if young people are interested in politics, and if not, why? But let's first kick things off in the studio, where it's time to listen to some brand new music from an indie band making waves in the UK. I'm even considering naming my daughter after them. It is the effortlessly called Calva, Louise!
Pointing fingers covered in young blood. It wasn't your intention. You just sold the land you call your own. And yet you say, let's keep pretending. Oh, can you see the damage instead?
Please give it up again for Calva, Louise! Woo! Now, Calva Louise will be playing for us a little bit later on in the show, but first, walk with me. We're going over to this lovely little area. I'm going to sit down in this Minecraft-looking chair, and then I'm going to casually look to the next camera. Hey. Yes, tonight, as well as stand-up from Ed Knight and more live music from Calva Louise, we'll be investigating the generational divide and if baby boomers really do hate millennials. But before all of that, we're asking this.
Last month, MPs were only given half an hour to debate a new bill to lower the voting age to 16. It was introduced a year ago, but it won't be voted on until October. The bill has gained cross-party support, yet Theresa May doesn't support the idea.
My view has always and continues to be that 18 is the right age.
At 16, you can move out, get married, and buy a pet, join the armed forces, pilot a glider, and even change your name by deed poll. The government trusts that you're old enough to own a snake, live on your own, fly a vehicle in the sky, and change your name to Bodie McBoatface. But for some reason, they don't trust you enough to vote. Could that be because in the last election, Labour beat the Conservatives in every age demographic below 50? The media often claim that young people aren't interested in politics, but in Scotland, 16-year-olds can vote in elections, and 75% turned out for their independence referendum, more than 18 to 34-year-olds. Reports and surveys show if 16 and 17-year-olds were able to vote, the UK would have remained in the EU, and the last election would have resulted in a hung parliament. Extending the franchise to 16-year-olds could make a huge difference for their future. In February, a Cabinet Office secretary told the House of Commons that the government is not in favor of change.
And we believe that it is right that the age of majority, 18, should continue to be the age at which people become eligible to vote.
But there is growing support for the idea inside the Conservative Party, from Nicky Morgan, Ruth Davidson, and Damien Green. So if you believe in extending decisions about our future to the people who are the future, there is still a chance to make a change. Labour claims a majority of Parliament support the bill. So write to your MPs, lobby online, make your voices heard, and be a part of the change for our future.
And if you feel passionate about this, there's nothing stopping you from writing to Tory MP David Lidington, who said in that clip that he doesn't think 16 and 17-year-olds are adult enough to vote. I'm sure he'd love to get thousands of letters from you all telling them otherwise. Now, joining us on the show to discuss the topics raised and more is 20-year-old human sciences student and Vice President of the University College of London Conservatives, Alice Rayner. Welcome to the Lowdown.
Thank you for having me.
So how can we better engage young people in politics if our leaders don't even think that they're capable of voting?
Well, I think it's more about making politics accessible to more people. I think at the moment there's a big movement of making everyone understand more what's happening. We've seen that with Brexit. The media, the government, the news, they've gone into more effort to explaining things to everyone. And I think before that, people thought that young people just weren't interested. But now I think we've realised that young people, it matters to young people and they do care. So I think there's been a big push to make politics more accessible and more easily understood to young people.
So it's maybe just a case that they didn't have the information beforehand?
Yeah, I mean, it was there, but it was a lot harder you had to make the effort to find it, whereas now it's all front page news on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram even.
Have you found there have been any obstacles to promoting the Conservatives to students like you and people your age?
I think sometimes people just, when they hear the word Conservative at university, if they're from maybe a left-wing background or they just haven't come across politics much, they just think there's a stigma against it, and I don't really think that's actually true. I think once you explain to people about Conservative values and why you vote Conservative, they usually understand, and I think you just need to be open and a bit less intolerant. I find some people on the left, on the very left at uni, those people who run the Labour societies and the Marxist societies, they're a bit intolerant and not very open to discussion. I think discussion is the way to get people interested and involved.
So the Young Conservatives Vice Chair, Ben Bradley, has admitted that there is a Tory image problem. So how can this be fixed to engage with these young people?
I think it is just explaining what the Conservative values are, because when I, as a university student, speak to other students and I explain to them why I vote the way I do and why I believe what I do, they usually do sympathise and they just want to know why they just didn't hear about it before.
I think sometimes people just look at the stereotypes, don't they, and just instantly assume that's what it is.
Most people at uni, they're quite chilled and they understand and they like having a discussion. They don't like it being so left and right, black and white. They want to have discussions and everyone just be open and honest with their views.
OK. So can Environment Secretary Michael Gove's green policies like fighting plastic waste help? Can that be something that can help appeal to younger voters?
Yeah, I think it can, because I think as young people, we do realise that the environment is one of the biggest challenges that our generation will face. And I think it's just a small step. I think there's obviously a lot of other things they should do, like environment's not be-all and end-all. Like, there's obviously a lot more things that go into running a country that matter to young people. But it's a good start.
I mean, for one, it's the one that gets a lot of publicity at the moment, so it makes sense to hit that one head-on.
And especially with, like, all of the whales, and it's so sad.
Absolutely.
So sad.
Well, so in May, the Tories suggested a members' discount at restaurants such as Nando's. Was this not just a patronising attempt to engage with young people?
Some of the people in the party are older and they're just brainstorming what can they do to connect the young, and Nando's, it's a popular culture thing. Everyone loves and cheeky Nando's with the lads, I don't know. What
do these young people want?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I just think it's like just an attempt, and I think it did get received quite badly, but it's only an attempt.
Yeah.
No bad intentions there, I don't think.
OK, well then, in the last election, Jeremy Corbyn's Labour had a surge of popularity thanks to these younger voters. Yeah. So, I mean, surely this is quite a fear to Conservatives.
Well, I think it is, but also we saw Labour Live, that went terribly. They had to give away free tickets. I think they think they're better with the younger voters than they think they are. It's just because they offered free tuition, and realistically that's not going to happen, and everything they promised was not going to come into force if they did go into power. So,
well, thank you, Alice. So we'll be chatting with you a bit later on as well with the rest of tonight's guests. But first, he's one of my favourite stand-ups on the circuit at the moment, nominated for Best Newcomer at last year's Edinburgh Fringe. Here to talk about drug dealers and brie, yeah, it's Ed Knight!
Thank you. Thanks. It's nice to be here. It's nice to just be out of the house for me, really. I don't really like my living situation at the moment. I've been living in this house share with my parents, which is it's tough living with mum and dad because I'm the least favourite child. I'm also an only child, so that sucks. It's tough being an only child. People with brothers and sisters tend to assume that it's great, but it's not, because as an only child, you have to come to the conclusion that you are the lesson your parents learned. I know that my mum and dad will look at me in much the same way that they'd look at a hastily purchased exercise bike or something of New Year's-y origins, you know. It's like, I'm not going to be as interested in this as I thought I was going to be. Let's just keep it in the shed, you know? It's nice. I come from Streatham in South London, which is lovely, but it's getting quite gentrified recently, I can tell, because my dealers joined LinkedIn. I like it. I'm quite proud of Streatham. I've grown up in the same postcode that my dad grew up in. He grew up incredibly working class, and he's achieved the dream of all working class people by becoming lower middle class. And I could tell he's lower middle class because he started eating brie, but it's Co-op own brand brie, which I loved, because I thought brie was one of those things, you know, like champagne or Cornish pasties, where to have the pedigree, it's got to be from that place. So I was imagining some guy in France, like, giving a tour of the factories, being like, oh, this is the factory that has supplied the kings of France with brie for hundreds of years. This factory supplies the Streatham Co-op. They also do funerals. A single guy, single for many reasons, I think. Main reason is my weird body shape. I've got this kind of like weird mix of fat and skinny at the same time, because I lost loads of weight, but not on purpose. I just stopped being able to afford as much food. So I've got this really kind of weird, like, Schrodinger's torso. I think I must be the only guy on the planet with visible ribs and tits as well. So my torso looks like a walrus trying to climb a ladder. Ugh, horrific. Nobody wants to see that. Also, I insist on doing comedy and relationships at the same time. It doesn't work, guys. My last romantic dalliance fell apart because they added Shrek to Netflix. And we were in bed watching it, and she kept interrupting by trying to fuck me. Did you ever have that? I was like, we've started watching it. We're gonna finish watching it, yeah? I don't have the core muscles to do what you want to do to me. This is, you suggested Netflix and chill. Neither of those is happening. Get out of my house. You know, that's not why it fell apart. It fell apart because I started to say that on stage. She came to see one of my gigs, and afterwards she came up to me and she was like, how come you can tell a room full of strangers our most intimate secrets, but you can't even touch me? I know. I was like, that is great. I'm going to say that on stage. Cheers. Hey, thanks a lot. I've been Ed Knight. You guys are lovely. Thank you.
Oh, really brilliant, Ed. Thank you. And Ed will be coming over to the sofa with the rest of our guests in just a second. Now, it's well reported that millennials are the first generation in over 100 years to be worse off than their parents. So, last month, the independent think tank, the Resolution Foundation, suggested giving everyone £10,000 when they turn 25. Yes, please. Today's pensioners are richer than their grandchildren, so this could be paid for by increasing taxes on these baby boomers. But could this really help heal the wealth divide? And just how bad is this generational gap? We sent our correspondent, Ellen Robertson, to the streets to get the lowdown.
Brexit, the property market, Mrs. Brown's boys. This country is divided between the generations. We are slap bang in the middle of an intergenerational war zone, so the lowdown has sent me, Ellen Robertson, media representative, to document the struggle. May the best generation survive. Now, as all of us liberal elite snowflake youngsters know, stereotyping is obviously wrong. So I'm interested to know what you think of millennials and why they're so lazy.
I don't think millennials are lazy at all.
Just entitled and spoiled?
No, I don't think they're entitled or spoiled.
Are you scared for our children's future, growing up to spend all their money on halloumis and lattes?
Definitely. I think we need to be concentrating more on a healthy environment for our children.
OK, so they're snowflakes?
No,
I'm just interested to know why you think it is that young people are more interested in buying avocados than houses. If I offered a 22-year-old an avocado or a house, which would they pick?
Definitely a house.
Is that the reason they can't get onto the housing market? So you're saying that the baby boomers have made the young generation obese as a way to stop them engaging in society?
Completely. I mean,
as expected, Generation X and the baby boomers are intolerant old vampires. They are baying for millennial blood, and the young must stand up. So if I can put words in your mouth for one moment,
Go for it.
You'd say that all old people should be...
More chill.
Do you have any grandparents?
Yeah.
So sorry.
They have a lot of expectation.
So they're narcissists?
No.
And do you think that's because they're quite lazy?
No, I just think it's just too much to...
Too much YouTube?
Yeah, too much YouTube. Yeah, too much YouTube.
Evil?
No.
Thanks so much. As you can clearly see from the people here on the streets, our great country is on the verge of collapse. Kids, stay inside. For God's sake, stay safe. And whatever you do, stay within your own ideological, generational and political bubble. Cross-contamination could be fatal. This is Ellen Robertson, reporting live from my very own millennial fallout bunker. See you on the other side. Guys. Very hot in here. Guys.
Thank you, Ellen, for that report. Now, we've seen what you and the media have to say about generational differences. So now, to discuss further, we're joined once again by Alice Rayner, Ed Knight, and Jess Alanik from Calva, Louise. So, Alice, do you think that giving people £10,000 when they turn 25 is a good idea? Would it allow for more saving, or would it lead to inflation and buying of more £500 Yeezy Airs?
I think maybe with anything like this, I think it definitely should be means tested. I don't think it's economically viable or a good idea to give £10,000 to everyone.
It's a nice idea, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really nice idea. All right, so, Jess, as millennials, do you find that you are stereotyped and generalised? And is this more damaging than we think, or is it just something that we're getting a bit too hyped over for nothing?
Well, it gets like when you're an artist, when you try to perform and live with it, like trying to get money from what you're doing, it feels a bit discouraging when people, you know, they have put this stereotype of get a real job. When, you know, I feel like our generation, we said, you know what, some generations before us could buy a house when they were 20 years old. And at 24, 25 years old, we still live with our parents because we can't afford anything, even though we work a lot.
Yeah.
So,
even in the arts, you know, like comedians of sort of in the 80s and 90s could afford a flat or a house just on gigging. You know, a musician, there used to be such a thrive, like pub scene, gig scene, that anyone could just sort of make a go of it and make decent money. People have double-fronted houses in Balham based just off stand-up comedy. I could barely afford travel here today.
Yeah. So, if there is a huge problem, what should we do about it?
I feel like the government have realised this and they're starting to take steps, like with Help to Buy ISAs and like getting rid of stamp duty. And I think like there are being small steps taken, but obviously more need to be taken.
I think we should do the Hunger Games. I think that would fix it.
Wait, for what? For young people? Or
yeah,
for...
yeah. Just a bit of entertainment.
What would be the different districts?
I feel like Streatham would have to be a district, and I'd be the guy from Streatham in the thing, yeah.
I mean, in all fairness, in the Hunger Games, when you won, you did get a house.
Yeah.
So
that is true, actually.
Quite helpful.
It's quite a nice house, isn't it?
Very good house.
Yeah.
Everyone in the Hunger Games can afford housing, and we can't afford housing.
Let's stop before we give these guys any ideas. Is it not ridiculous that in this modern age that we live in Britain, which is considered to be such a rich country, that we have people who are under 30 that are still suffering from deprivation and like poor living standards?
You know, living in London is kind of a bit too much. You believe when you're a foreign and you arrive in London, for example, you're like, oh, this is the normality, and then you go further, you go up north, you go to Manchester, Liverpool, Sheffield, Blackpool, and you're like,
why would anyone do that?
no, but honestly, it's like, oh, it's a completely different world.
Do you feel confident then that a Conservative government can and even wants to heal this divide?
No, I think it does. I think you've seen that in the recent changes in policy. And like with the universities, they've re-looked at how we pay back our student fees, and they're constantly looking at it.
All right, so Ed, is it really possible then for Jeremy Corbyn? No, we'll move on there. Jeremy Corbyn and Labour. Is it
Never
possible?
Heard of him.
Really? Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Is it possible then for Jeremy Corbyn and Labour to clear the tuition fees that they want to and reinstate the maintenance grant, given the current economic problem?
Almost definitely not. They're going to face so much opposition doing that. It wasn't. People forget that before the £9,000 tuition fees, tuition wasn't free. It's not like getting rid of tuition fees isn't like an easy. It's not just going back to how it was in 2007 or whatever.
Is he not looking at it realistically?
No, I think the point for me, I think the point of policy is like optimism and what you do in an ideal world. And I 100% agree that that's what we should be doing. And I like the fact that that's something that he prioritises. But realistically, I don't think it's something that he'd be able to do.
Yeah, it's a really nice thought, but it's always practicality that you've got to think about.
Again, my answer is Hunger Games again.
Well, thank you, Alice, Ed, and Jess. Now, Jess, you need to return back to your great band and play the final song, which is?
Outrageous.
Delightful. I release you. Whilst Jess gets ready with the band, I've got just enough time to tell you that is it for tonight on The Lowdown. A big thank you to our guests, our studio audience, and to you for watching at home. We are back at the same time next week with singer Nadia Rose, comedian Nish Kumar, and journalist Kate Maltby. And now, playing us out with their new single, Outrageous! Once again, it's Calva, Louise!
It's so